So I think actually Bucky's probably more nervous about what I'm going to say than what the speech is about, than me giving the speech. But I assure you, don't worry. I talked all about how you're super mellow and laid back, Coach. Just kidding. So the people here who are at Fencers Club can really know what the training was like in Rochester Fencing Club. So this particular intro speech for Buckie has been over 30 years in the making. He officially started his coaching career at the Rochester Fencing Club in 1980 in downtown Rochester, New York. It wasn't long after he opened those doors that Felicia and I walked through them, along with Tad and Mary Joy Clinton, Sue Clinton, Andy Gerhardt, Alex Wood, and many others. In a span of less than 10 years, Buckie students dominated national fencing tournaments. My sister and Sean McLean used to win cadet and junior events at Junior Olympics in both foil and épée. However, Buckie wanted more for himself and his students. So he set his course to the international stage, and within a short span of time, became world champions and Olympians. Most of you in the room can probably remember that it was during the 1990s, people moved from around the country and around the world to train with Buckie. Many of them lived in Sue Clinton's house, which was and still is down the street from the fencing club. Her house in the RFC became a fencing boarding school of sorts with people like Juliana Sykes, Ann Marsh, Jane Hull Carter, and Susie Paxton that came to Rochester for the sole purpose of fencing. So the question is, why did everyone want to move to upstate New York, where it snows pretty much 11 months of the year, to train with some American coach who liked to listen to Bob Dylan and loved hamburgers? Still does love hamburgers. The answer is that Buckie Leach was the first breakthrough American-born coach that was innovative enough, dedicated enough, and demanding enough to want to shift the status quo of American fencing. From the start, Buckie challenged the idea of what it meant to be a fencer. Driven by his background in pentathlon, he knew the importance of training like a professional athlete. He encouraged his students to dedicate their time and efforts to fencing, not as a hobby, but a legitimate sport. I put encouraged in quotes. This table laughs because we all train with him. For the fencers at the RFC, school was just a pit stop between practices. So, I wouldn't do the speech justice if I didn't tell the story I'm about to tell, especially since Susan and Ann are out in the audience. When I was in 7th grade, Buckie decided that a group of us, with Susan and Ann, would get up early and swim at the local YMCA before school. He would drive 20 minutes out of the way to pick me up at 5:30 in the morning, and would drive us all back, drop us all off at school afterwards. Buckie was a swimmer. I was not. I signed up for fencing, and so did Susan and Ann, but nevertheless, we did swim. However, he did manage to add elements of fencing into the workout. One day, Buckie decided that we should work on our fleshes, and told us to flesh into the pool from the edge. No, it was more like, flesh into the pool from the edge. To which we responded with laughter and snickering. He responded, dive in to not for suitable for the audience pool. So we got out and we fleshed into the pool. Well, the lifeguard kind of gave us confused looks, but he knew not to question Buckie while he was coaching us in swimming, us fencers swimming. So, although I never really used the flesh, swimming must have helped me somewhat because a year later, I won the Cadet World Championships at age 14. So maybe it was sort of worth it, sort of. The second adjective I use to describe Buckie is dedicated. After having worked with a few coaches besides him, I can honestly say that his dedication to the sport and to his students is really remarkable, almost to the point of insanity. I would be remiss if I did not mention all the crazy van trips that we had to various tournaments, often to places in the middle of nowhere in Canada. So Sue Clinton reminded me that Buckie would consider a destination that is 12 to 16 hours away as a drivable van trip. Yeah. The fencing tournaments were almost invariably during the dead of winter, where no one but Buckie would drive an old, probably actually didn't pass inspection, 18-passenger van 12 hours to a fencing tournament. In order to make things more affordable for our families, Buckie used to drive us up the day before the competition, then drive back the night of the competition. So ice on that road, plus a tired and he was often angry Buckie driving. It wasn't the most cheerful car trip. So in order to stay awake, Buckie used to roll down the windows, blast in that cold air, and blast Bob Dylan. I also don't ever remember putting on a seatbelt, and I'm still wondering how our parents ever let us go on any of these trips. So, I don't know, it was a miracle. The last adjective I used to describe Buckie is demanding. I think it's a little bit of an understatement. So anyone who has trained with him knows that he wants nothing else than perfection. I once did about 200 advanced lunges after losing a tournament with my stuff on because I didn't do the advanced lunges correctly during the tournament. So I had to stop with my stuff on at the end and stand there 200 advanced lunges. At practices, there was no sitting, so you guys know where that rule comes from. There were no vacations, no water breaks during lessons, no stopping, and no questioning Buckie. There was none of that. You never were at a loss to figure out exactly what he wanted from you, although sometimes messages were lost despite his best efforts. At one fencing competition, Buckie was angry with Felicia when she was done because she had done some action, and she was sort of confused. She's like, Buckie, I did what you said, low, flick, high. Low, flick, high. So Buckie was like, I didn't say low, flick, high. I said low, high. So sometimes his messages were misconstrued, but not very often. That's one of my favorites. It's okay. But he got the point across. We listened to him, and we all were better for that. So there's no question that Buckie started something historical in upstate New York, and he continues to produce great fencers in his current town of New York City. Most recently, his women's foil student, Nzinga Prescott, won a women's foil Grand Prix in Marseille, France. Amazing. Yes. Yeah! So, Buckie, from all of our students and everyone you have worked with over the past 30 plus years, congratulations on your induction today into the U.S. Hall of Fame. We look forward to what you'll do in the next 30 years.
I had a strange name when I came here today, but Bloodgood and Funky. Those names were, I couldn't believe those. So I'm excited to be here. It was great to have Iris introduce me. It's great to see Cliff here. I have to tell a story about Cliff. I've been thinking about this story for a long time because it's about Cliff and Iris. And everybody is, Cliff, you did great things, okay? But we're at the Olympics, and the first thing Cliff says to me, he's got his credential, and he says, Buckie, this credential is a babe magnet. He's like, there are volunteers everywhere. It's fantastic. And I said, Cliff, I really don't think it's gonna work so well for me. And he says, no, it's okay. There are some older volunteers here too. And then I related the story to Iris, and Iris and Cliff had been friends for a long time. So Aaron, Smart, Felicia, we're all sitting at a table, and I told the story about Cliff. And Iris looks at me, and with a very sincere, naive look says, but Cliff has a girlfriend. And I looked at Aaron, and Aaron is like, I don't know. That's the way she is. So, I had written some stuff down and left it at the hotel. So I'm kind of winging it here a little bit. I know there's a lot of things I want to say, but mostly I want to thank a lot of people for a lot of the stuff that's happened to me through my career. First with Arnie, Andy, and Steve for putting this together and kind of trying to preserve the history of fencing, because in general, I think as a community, we ignore our history. We have a lot of good stuff that's happened, but we don't pay attention to it. And to give you a perspective on that, one day I'm sitting at a bar with a couple friends of mine, Jeff Salmon and Alan Coover. And a friend of ours is sitting at another table, his name is Dave Blake, with a bunch of young referees. And Dave Blake comes over to us and he says, I'm sitting with these young referees and they say to me, we know Alan and we know Jeff, but who's that little guy in between them? So as exciting as this is and as good as it feels, it's, our stars burn brightly for a short time. And Cliff, I was going to say, you won that tournament in St. Petersburg, and you know that it's a good thing Monique de Bruin didn't fence in that. Cliff, as good as he was, could never beat Monique de Bruin. So some of the people, again, I'd like to thank, and I learned a lot over my time. One of the people was Emmett Kaidanov. When I was a young kid and I was just getting started coaching, I went to Emmett for about 2 weeks and just spent a lot of time following him, and I really want to thank him for the time that he spent with me, and he really made me understand a little bit more about fencing. Another person, Felicia Zimmerman. I learned more from coaching Felicia than I probably learned from anybody else. We would do, I would give her lessons and I had this idea of what she should do, and it was a great idea. And she would do something completely different and I'd be like, well, shit, excuse me. I'm sorry, that was a much better idea than the idea that I had. So it was a constant learning process. And then she also we'd start to go to international competitions, and Felicia started a little bit ahead of me going to the events. And we would go at the airport and you would see Felicia and me, and I would be the adult and she was the kid. But basically, it was the other way around. I would just follow Felicia, looking like I was in charge, but wherever she would go, she'd look at the sign and I would follow her. So, it's my first couple years at a competition. Ann Marsh is here, it's great. She taught me that throwing up before a competition was not a bad thing. Susie Paxson, who's not here today, was great. She taught me that anybody could achieve anything if they had enough desire. Susie had the number 32, because in those days, if you made a 32, you could be on the Olympic team. So she had 32 written everywhere. Everywhere you would look, there was the number 32, and that was her goal. And she just drove herself to do that. And it made me realize that if you worked hard enough at something, that you could accomplish it. Carla Mae Richards, is Carla Mae here? Okay, Carla Mae was a great help for me. She was a great help for coaches, for me. I grew up with her. I was the kid who always forgot to send his entry in for the competition, or had the late entry. And then when I became national coach, I was the national coach who forgot to turn in his budget, or actually forgot to do his budget. So it was important to be around Carla. So basically, there were a lot of people that helped me along the way. Tom Zimmerman, Tom and Iris's father, or Tom and Christine, mother and father. Tom taught me that you could learn something from anybody. One day he said to me, Iris needs to duck more. Iris was 13, 14 years old. She's got to duck more. And I thought, why am I listening to this parent? And so at the World Championships, Iris is fencing with Margarita Grambassi. It's her first World Championships. It's the final, it's a gold medal bout. 3 times, Iris ducks, 1 light, scores the touch. Iris wins 15-13. And it was like a realization for me that no matter who told me anything, I would listen to them, okay? Never ignore anybody's advice. So thank you, Thomas, for that. So anyway, I really do appreciate the accolades. It's great to be here with Cliff and with Iris and with Hans Halberstadt. Like, none of us fencing coaches today are nearly as cool as those old fencing coaches, but it's great to be recognized with them. I think I got pretty much everybody who I wanted to thank, but I probably missed them because, again, no paper. So again, thank you very much. Yelling at a referee. You gotta yell at him, you gotta come back and yell at him, you gotta come back and yell at him again. But I gotta tell you a story about Iris, because Iris is gonna be recognized next. Iris is like the toughest kid you'll ever meet. I would give lessons to Felicia, and I would yell at Felicia for about a half an hour. And finally, after half an hour of just yelling, she would start to cry and then hyperventilate. And the hyperventilating drove me crazy because I'd have to stop my lesson and then I'd have to calm her down. So I'd have to take 10 minutes just to kind of calm her down. I would try to tell her a joke and then she'd start to hyperventilate again. It was terrible. So Iris is 9 years old. And again, in my normal style, I started to yell at her for like 20, it took about 20 minutes before she started to have a reaction. And she started to hyperventilate. Minus the expletives. Iris, you can't hyperventilate. Your sister hyperventilates all the time. I have to stop the lesson. It takes me 10 minutes to fix it. There's no hyperventilating. Iris looked at me and she said, okay. And that was it. There was no hyperventilating after that. So Iris is an amazing kid. She really is. So congratulations on your acceptance also.
So just for a quick break before we get to Iris, I want to just tell you about things that Bucky and I used to have a relationship together. So in the old rules, that's a joke. It's a joke. I live in Louisiana, they'd kill me. Okay, so I used to be a very strict director.